Nerd!
Homer, that isn't very nice.
Marge, try to understand. As a jock, it is my duty to give nerds a hard time.
Hello everyone, Nucleus here, and as I promised, we're gonna finish off the build for this computer. So I'm I did a little bit of pre-staging on the case. We're gonna do a little pre-staging here on the motherboard setup, and then we're gonna kind of do the full build proper. So what I have here are actually just cable extensions. They don't provide any additional function other than extending the cables. And so I'm going to install some of these. I have the ones for the 12-volt EPS, which is for our CPU. We have a 24-pin, and of course I have some for the PCIe cables for the video card. And the thing about these cable extensions, they come in a bunch of different colors. These, I believe, I got from, well, I know I got them from Micro Center, but the brand is called Micro Connector. I've used cables from Cable Mod. Typically they're just the simple solid cables. They do have their cable configurator, if I remember that it being called that correctly, which you can get customized cables where you can have a customized color palette for depending on whatever it is, whatever kind of color scheme your build is going for. So we got this here. Let me grab the case and we'll go ahead and get this started. So I've already removed the back. Obviously I've already removed the back panel and the glass front panel. I've removed two of the PCIe slot covers for the case. Brought a couple of cables. This is the audio header for the front panel, or technically it's on the top, but it's a front panel header. This is the USB 3 cable that goes to the motherboard. These are the front panel power and LED lights. Power. Do I not have a reset switch? An LED switch. I do not have a reset switch. That's interesting. So, but we'll get those started. So one of the things you have to kind of know, and I guess I should reiterate it, because the motherboard that I'm using, since it came from an old computer, and the rear I/O shield is missing. There would be a slightly different way in which you install the motherboard, and that typically just has you maneuvering it to make sure that all of your rear I/O line up perfectly with your rear I/O shield. Because as you can see here in the motherboard, you have the connectors for the audio solution, as well as this built-in DVI connector. It kind of protrudes out a little bit, so you definitely want to make sure that you, in situations like that, you would slot it in to make sure that it kind of meets up with the rear I/O shield as close as possible, because the point of it is to try to keep dust from out of the computer. So we kind of have, with the way the airflow is set up for this, it's kind of it's a positive airflow solution, meaning that those three fans at the front are going to be pushing in a lot of air. So the other part is that with our motherboard standoffs, so there's a standardized spacing for the different motherboard sizes. They all have where the standoffs are generally going to be pretty much in the same position. You will have some cases that have that allow for, or they will provide you with extra standoffs to screw into the motherboard tray. And that's typically to accommodate that EATX motherboard size, which is not an actual form factor, is kind of a pseudo form factor, if you will. Let's go ahead and get the motherboard in and get some things connected. So when dealing with a motherboard like this, whether you're using an all-in-one cooler or an air cooler, you're typically going to be holding it from the cooler, no matter which type it is. So, and then you're going to, well, you're not going to drop it in, but you're going to set the motherboard onto the standoffs as best as you can. You definitely want to make sure that they're lined up perfectly so you can screw it down. And I think we got it. Yeah. So the Montech, most cases do. They come with screws for your motherboard to screw down onto the motherboard tray. So you just typically need a Phillips head screwdriver. That's pretty much it. Sometimes you do want to be careful though, because with well, in this situation, because I have such a large cooler, sometimes getting the motherboard screwed down can be a pain, especially when you get into the connectors up here, or excuse me, the standoffs at the top of the motherboard, at the top of the case. And I think I'm going to switch out my screwdriver instead of this one, that 10-in-1. And for something a little more basic. A 10-in-1 screwdriver is good for most things, but yeah, sometimes it's kind of the hindrance in PC building. Alright, now that we got the motherboard all screwed down, we can, I will go ahead and connect up the USB 3 header we got here. We got one here and then one down there. The connectors are keyed. As you can see, there's a little extrusion there on the connector to marry up with that notch. There we go. And we'll go ahead and connect the motherboard audio. As you can see, well, it's not necessarily keyed, but there is a specific way in which you connect it. As you got that one pin that's blocked out, and on the motherboard, that pin is missing. There we go. So, and now what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and we're going to install the video card. And as you can see, I've already, the PCIe slot covers have already been removed. We will open the latch, which has already been opened. And there we go. Yep. There we go. Now the latch can only hold it in so far. And so that's when we have to screw down something is not right. Ah, there we go. There we go. Now it's secure. And so we'll go ahead and screw it down. Typically, with new video cards with their cooling solutions typically being very large, there is a anti-sag bracket that will come with some, and some PC cases have their own already pre-built or pre-built in and installed in the case, or it just typically comes with it. If you saw the build for the last gen PC build that I did, which was the 69 or 59, was it 59? 6950X and the 6950 XT video card from Sapphire, that had an anti-sag bracket that you had to install along at the PCI slots that held up the card. It was a 2.5, about 3 slot card. Here's the other. And we are secure. And so I do have, like I mentioned before, I do have the cable extensions, PCIe cable extensions for our card. And so those are going to go in. There. And then we will route them to the back of the case. And I will be back shortly after I've kind of got everything routed backwards, and then we'll take a look at the back of the case. Okay, so here we are on the back panel, or the back of the case. As I've already routed the cables through. As you can see, we've already got some Velcro tie downs. This is a USB Gen 3 Type C connector. Our motherboard doesn't have it, so it's going to stay back here. This is so for our fan hub and LED hub or ARGB hub. We have our SATA connector. We have an ARGB connector for an ARGB header. This motherboard only has regular RGB and not ARGB, so we won't be using that. This is a fan connector for the fan hub. We will go ahead and pass that through here. And we'll just feed all the cable there, and we'll pull back the excess as necessary. And what else do we have? This is for the LED switch, which will probably go to a front panel header. Since we're not concerned with lighting, we won't hook that up. Our power cables, we've pulled, our power cable extensions, I've pulled through. Sorry, you can't see. My power cable extensions, I've gone ahead and pulled those through for our EPS 12 volt and for our video card. So cable management is, you could say it's an art form. I'm going to try to manage them a little bit. I don't want to spend a bunch of time on them. But cable management is not really important as far as airflow. It's more about aesthetics, but you want to make sure that your cables are managed enough to where you can close this rear panel. Some people do spend a significant amount of time on their cable management, but for a part of the computer that no one's going to see, we're not going to go too deep into it. So from there, we're going to install our power supply. So I have a CX750M from Corsair. It's a 750 watt power supply. We have cables already pre-installed, so it's semi-modular. So this fan here is meant to provide cooling to all the components within the power supply. So that's going to be facing down, as at the bottom of our motherboard, or sorry, at the bottom of our case, we have this area here that's that's perforated, and it also has a dust filter so that we can feed air to our power supply and keep it cool. So it's going to go in face down and towards the back here. Now there are some screws that did come with the case for our power supply. Oh, I guess may as well mention this too. As you can see here, we have sleds for our SSDs. Here, better if you can see it, sleds for our SSDs. I don't remember if I went over the whole case with you. Sleds for SSDs, because there are screws that came with the case to mount 2.5-inch drives here on these sleds. Also, we have spots here, specifically here and down here, to mount SSDs as well. So you can mount 4 SSDs, and we have our bottom drive cage here. Yeah, you can see it. So actually, before I install our power supply, I should go ahead and probably add our power supply cables, because we have our power supply has 2 SATA cables, a piece, and 3 SATA connections, and 3 PCIe cables. But one of them is also capable of being used for our CPU. This cable here is one of our designated CPU cables. So we're going to go ahead and add the other. We only really need 1 SATA cable, because we only have the 1 SATA hard drive and the 1 SATA connection for our fan hub. So this is the SATA cable. It has 4 connections on it. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in. So we have our 8-pin connector. That's our EPS 12 volt. This is the end that goes to the power supply. This is going to go towards one of the cable extensions. And then we have our 2 PCIe cables. As you can see, that this is kind of split depending on your video card configuration. We're not going to use kind of the splitter or the divider. We're just going to go ahead and plug into this connector here, as well as the other one. I'm going to get that connected. explains why. Our cable came out. There we go. And there's a second one. And now I will get the screws for the power supply, which I dropped. So our power supply is mounted and secured. Now we'll go ahead and start connecting up our cables. So we have our APS 12 volts for our CPU. And the good thing about having a case that has a power supply basement is that you can tuck all of your excess cables, particularly your power cables, down into there. If you're concerned about the way your cable management on the back looks. So as you can see, we can already start routing the cables back here. And putting that excess into our basement, or power supply shroud. It's essentially a basement. Then we have our 24-pin motherboard cable. We have our SATA power cable. As you can see, also it's keyed, so you want to make sure you're plugging it in correctly. And we're tucking it tucking the excess down into the basement. And then we have our GPU, our power supply, or excuse me, GPU or video card cable. There we go. Yeah, there we go. And our other one and there we go. So now we have all of those cables connected. We'll put this cable mess down into our basement. And actually, I forgot to mention, I need to put in our mechanical hard drive. So the thing about the hard drive cage down here is that it is actually repositionable. So this is the forwardmost point in which you can have it mounted, but on the bottom are two thumb screws that you can remove, which you can kind of slide up the drive cage. And so the drive cage goes in this way. I do have some screws that did come with the case for the hard drive cage. Put those there. And then we will find the position of the screws for our drive cage. Get it aligned. And then we'll start screwing down. So as you can see, it's going to be 3 holes on each side, but we don't necessarily need to use 6 screws to mount this. Yeah, that's that. So let's go ahead and put the drive cage back in. And so for future reference, depending on the design of your case, you might want to do this step before you start hooking up your cables. But that was relatively painless. And as you can see, with our SATA power cables, you can connect multiple devices to it. So that was our fan hub. We have this one down here, so we'll go ahead and connect our hard drive to power, and then we'll get a SATA cable for data. There you go. And same thing, SATA power is keyed on the device as well. And give me a second and I'll have a SATA connector for you for the hard drive. Alright, so we have our SATA cable. The old style SATA cables didn't have this little metal clip on it to lash, and having it these days is actually very good because it really does secure that SATA connection when you connect it to your hard drive and then finally connect it to the motherboard. So, and it's secure. We will route it through our hard drive cutout. And so I'm going to go ahead and start tying these down. I will clean up the rest of the cables at another time, but we're going to have to get the back panel on. So, as you can see, that cable bulk, managing it is real important. Because we have to get the back panel on and get it closed up. So there we go. All right, back to the front again. Oh, we got cables protruding through. We have our So back to the front again. We've got our cables coming through. We have our 6 SATA 3 ports here. I believe when we have the SSD connected in, we lose the first SATA connection, so which is on top. So we're going to go down into SATA 2 here at the bottom and get that plugged in. So I went ahead and already plugged in the our front panel headers, which is for our power button, hard drive activity indicator light, reset switch, and etc. So the thing about those is the layout for them is pretty standard. If you're ever confused, they'll either have an indicator somewhere on the motherboard, like here, or you can find it in your motherboard's user manual. And that's probably the best place to look because this text is tiny. I know we do also have another fan connection we need to plug in, which is this for our fan hub. And we have that right there. I'll go back and pull some slack out of it, the rest of this. But for all intents and purposes, the build is done. So next we'll go ahead and we'll power it on. One thing I won't be doing for this video is the BIOS update for the motherboard so that it can use our 5800X. So I will leave a description, a link in the description to MSI's video on how to update BIOS, and it's basically the same steps for all their motherboards. It hasn't changed in quite a while, so the process is still the same. I have used it on different motherboards for AMD and Intel processors, so it's pretty consistent, pretty easy. Just make sure that you have yourself a a spare USB drive when you need to do a BIOS update. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.